Well, hello you guys. We're gonna see how well he does. I have him and his little baby Bjorn bouncer literally like right beside you guys. Let me actually come a little bit closer to me, bud. In that ridiculous amount of time, he ended up needing his diaper changed and then wanted a little bit more food, and now he's back asleep. So fingers crossed that we can get through this, but if not, like, it's no big deal. He's really my priority. You guys are not my priority, so we'll just see what's going on over here. So before I get into my labor and delivery story, I do want to share a little bit about what has been going on with my relationship. My plan going forward is still to keep my relationship extremely private, but for the sake of this story and just like filling you guys in on what has been going on and what is about to go on in the next couple of months, bless you, bud, I think it's time that we finally talk about it. So I found out I was pregnant 4 days before my man was leaving Alabama for the military. And if you guys have family members in the military, if you're in the military yourself, like, there's just a lot that's kind of outside of your control. Like, joining the military is an incredible sacrifice, but like, beyond your actual service, there's so much that's up in the air, and I've learned so much that it's just like, you just need to release control and just like go with the flow, and whatever's gonna happen is going to happen. So we originally had one set plan, and I actually wasn't supposed to give birth here in Birmingham, but things changed, and it wasn't until I was actually on workshop tour. I had just landed in New York City when he called me and was like, hey, this is actually the new situation. And I just kind of had to make the executive decision of like, I was 32 weeks pregnant then. I was like, I cannot move with you right now, because finding a new doctor, like, I was 4 weeks away from 36 weeks, which is like really like the game time when like baby can come at any point type thing. I was like, I need to stay here in Birmingham with my doctors and give birth here, which meant that there was a very, very high possibility that he was not going to be there for birth. And even before we found that out, things were like kind of up in the air for a while. So I actually had Cameron already locked down as my backup plan, my go-to gal. If he was not going to be able to make it, like, Cameron was going to be the person in my labor and delivery room. And yeah, so we ended up getting the news that like his growth had slowed, that I was going to have the ultrasound the next week, all of that stuff. And by quite literally the grace of God, like, the universe was working some friggin' magic, my man was able to come home for the Labor Day weekend, and I went into labor naturally, and he was able to be there for birth. And we will get to what ended up happening immediately after that and more about this going forward. But labor and delivery, let's dive into it. So before we get to the footage, okay, the night before I actually went into labor, I decided to do more movements on my exercise ball. So I was doing figure eights, I was doing hip circles, I was bouncing on it, I was doing some stretches, and I was just doing some light movement trying to open my pelvis and to get him rolling. And I was watching YouTube videos on unmedicated labor, breathing techniques, all of that stuff, because my plan going into labor was I just wanted to go as long as possible without an epidural. I'm so sorry if this is like extremely, extremely loud for you, because it is so loud for me. My neighbors have their landscaping happening right now. But I wanted to go as long as possible without an epidural. If that meant that I could go through the whole entire process without an epidural, great. If that meant I could only make it a couple centimeters dilated, fine. I just wanted to be able to labor at home for as long as possible, and I wanted to be able to move and just like do my thing, instead of like when you get the epidural, like you're in bed, like you're stuck, you can't walk, you can't move, and I just wanted to like be able to do my thing for as long as possible. So let's dive in. This is great. I don't
even... What? So, I laid down to go to bed. I don't even know what time. It was probably like 7:30. But I was like watching TV, watching Friends, whatever. And I've been having like really, really bad pain right here. But like the last several days, so this is like nothing new. Well, I could not get comfortable until it ended up being like 10:30. And I was just like rolling from side to side. I had like pillow put on my leg and I was so uncomfortable that I would get these like random just like urges of holy shit, this really fucking hurts. And then one of the times I was like, I need to get up, like this is just like so uncomfortable. And I got up and I like felt discharge. So I went to the bathroom, peed, and I think I lost my mucus plug. I'm pretty sure I did. And then I laid back in bed and I was like, oh my gosh, wait a second. I've been getting like these surges type thing. Every so often. I was like, this is actually pretty consistent, like more consistent than like I'm even realizing. So I was just laying in bed and I was like, okay, let's look at the clock every time I get one of these. And it's like every 4 minutes. Mind you, I don't know, I was expecting like my whole stomach to like feel pain. No, I'm just getting like really, really, it's not that strong, but like strong-ish, sharp-ish pain lower. So I was like, let me just come out here because I'm not getting any sleep in there. By some chance, my man is home right now, like by some fucking chance. So I decided to come out, went to the bathroom, and I actually have blood, which now has me concerned. So I think I need to call my doctor. Actually, I'm gonna call my doctor. I just like put, this is so much information, but like it is what it is when it comes to like labor and stuff. I just like put toilet paper in my underwear right now just to like see how much is like coming out of me. But I think I'm gonna have this child today, or at least I'm gonna go into serious labor today, because either way I'm going to the hospital, because I know like bleeding isn't. Holy shit. The blood thing freaked me out. I want to like labor at home as long as possible, but I just don't know. Maybe it's like totally normal. Maybe it is. Okay, I'm gonna go to the bathroom again.
Hi, can I be transferred to labor and delivery? Thank you. I don't really have any contractions. I've got a little bit of cramping, but I'm not sure what I should do with the bleeding. This is my first. Perfect. Thank you so much. I appreciate it. They weren't necessarily helpful. They said if it's like a period, like if it's consistent, I should go in and get checked out. But otherwise, since I'm not like contracting or anything, it's not a big deal. So I think I'm gonna chill for a little. See if it continues to be consistent, or if it's just because I like lost my mucus plug or what. It's also like kind of not surprising to me, because I think I talked about this. Yeah, I definitely talked about it in one of my other videos, but in high school I was diagnosed with a blood disorder. And then especially becoming pregnant, I was like, what the hell do we do with this? So my blood disorder, I was diagnosed with von Willebrand disease, which basically just means my blood does not clot as fast or the way it quite frankly should. So when I became pregnant, I obviously told my doctor, and I was like, what does that entail with labor and delivery and everything else? Because like postpartum, like if my blood is not clotting, like that's not great. So we reran my levels, and my levels were actually fine. They were like within normal range. But apparently when you get pregnant, your blood clotting levels actually improve. I have no fucking idea. I'm not a doctor here.
So I don't know. It's still like always like in my mind of like, okay, well, like I have a blood disorder because it's just like I was diagnosed like years ago with it. So even though like my levels appear fine now, it's like just like kind of what I'm used to, you know? So I'm like not surprised that I'm bleeding, but I'm just gonna track it. The thing, I'm not having contractions. And I want to labor at home as long as possible. Okay, let's get out of this basement because this place is a freaking disaster.
I ended up getting some sleep, which is great. I slept for probably like an hour and a half, woke up, maybe another like 2 hours, and then I slept for like I think another 2 hours, so 5.5 hours-ish. Not bad, honestly. I didn't really get up until after 10, and now I'm finally getting more food in my body beyond the cereal that I ate. I figured this might be my last little adventure on my own, so might as well enjoy it. But I don't know, I'm in the spot right now where I don't know what to do, because like the more I'm up and moving around, I'm getting more contractions, and I want the contractions to continue. And Cameron has a little like birthday party happening in 24 minutes, and my thought was like, you know what, I can't go to that. But now I'm like, I should probably just go to that because it'll have me like up and moving, and I'm nowhere close to the point of like going to the hospital. Like, I told my man that I wanted Crestline. He was like, okay, you gonna go pick it up, or like you gonna go by yourself? You gonna get it delivered? Like, what are you doing? And I was like, yeah, I'm just gonna go by myself. And he was like, so you're gonna tell me if you go into labor? And I was like, I'm not there. Like, I don't feel anywhere close to there. Even like the contractions I'm having, yeah, they're uncomfortable, but like I've had worse period cramps before. So I'm like, I have to be at the very, very early stages right now. And I especially like, I just don't want to go to the hospital too early and then have them send us home, or even just like, I would rather just like labor at home as long as possible. So yay, they did this right. Last time I went, they accidentally put cream cheese on it, and I was like, did I say put cream cheese on it? It ended up getting to the point where like my contraction timer told me 3 times to go to the hospital. My man kept asking me like, Cathrin, do you think it's time to go? Do you think it's time to go? And I'm like, no, I know I should be in more pain. And I honestly stopped really using the word pain leading up to labor, because I wanted to like rewire my brain to be like, this isn't painful, this is just uncomfortable. Because the more it's like, oh my gosh, pain is coming, like your body tenses up. So I was like uncomfortable. But I was like, I know I should be far more uncomfortable than this. Like, this should be far stronger than what it is. But the contractions were so incredibly consistent. I had lost my mucus plug. I did have like that bloody discharge, and I was like, you know what, let's go to the hospital. After the freaking app told me 3 times, let's go to the hospital. And I was at the point where I was like moaning getting through the contractions. I was trying to do, I think they call it like the J breath type thing, so like breathing in through your nose for 4, and then like it's like a oh, or like a deeper moan, so you're not like really like blowing out a lot of air. If you guys have watched any videos on like labor and delivery breathing techniques, you know exactly what I'm talking about. So that's what I was doing, and it just like, it did get to the point where I was struggling a little bit through contractions, but I was like, I know this should be so much worse, but my app is telling me to go to the hospital. My man has asked me multiple times to go to the hospital, so you know what, let's go to the hospital. We end up going to the hospital, and I was able to walk to labor and delivery. So at my hospital, which I feel like this is probably extremely common, but like when it's after hours, you have to go through the emergency room. So I had to go through the emergency room, walk down a long hallway, go up an elevator, walk down another long hallway to get the whole way to labor and delivery. So by the time that I got there, contractions were enough that like I could not talk through them. But I'm telling you, I knew that I should have been in more pain. Like I knew there should have been more discomfort there. So they ended up hooking me up to the monitor, and the nurse, I don't know, like, honestly, all of the differences between, like, nurse, RN, and all of that stuff. The person that was there, okay, said the doctor was gonna come in and check my cervix. The monitor was obviously tracking my contractions, and depending on how far dilated I was, I could be admitted, or, like, if contractions weren't serious, if I wasn't dilated at all, that meant that I was gonna go home. So I ended up having a cervical exam that was traumatizing, to say the least. It was extremely uncomfortable. It was really, really rough, and it was just like not a pleasant experience at all. And it really messed me up. Like, I ended up crying afterwards because it was just like, it was not a good experience by any means. And because of that, it put my body more so in a state of stress instead of relaxing, and my contractions almost basically stopped for me. So they ended up leaving me there for a while. They actually said, like, I was not dilated at all, and I was still, like, it's very fascinating. Your cervix is actually pointed towards, like, your spine, and then it will, like, move. Wild, whole situation. So I was still actually, like, pointed back, and there was, like, absolutely zero progress that was made there. So they were like, unless contractions are serious, we're sending you home. The contractions stopped. They were like, yeah, go the F home. As soon as I, like, stood up from the bed, contractions started to hit me again, and they offered to give me 2 shots. So they were like, we can send you home. Your best, like, bet is to sleep as much as you possibly can. Come back when things get more serious. We can give you 2 shots to help you sleep, and as like a little like pain relief for your contractions. What do you want? And at first I said no, because I was afraid it was going to slow my progress. And when I was laying in the bed, I was like, well, my contractions have stopped now, because now my body's in a state of stress instead of relaxing. So I was like, no, I don't need that. When I stood up and started walking around, my man looked at me and he was like, are you sure you don't want that? Like, you are uncomfortable right now. And I was like, I just don't know what that is, and I'm not gonna put something in my body that, like, I don't feel comfortable with. So the nurse ended up coming back in, and she was so incredibly sweet. Like, I really, really liked that nurse. She ended up coming back in, and I was like, hey, can you tell me a little bit more about these shots? Like, what is this really? And she explained it a little bit better. One was like pain relief situation, and then I think because of that, the other one like made you drowsy. I don't even know, honestly. I don't remember at this point, because I was a little bit out of it. I was in this just like stressed out, ridiculous state of like, oh my gosh, I can't believe my labor is going to go like this. Like, I was just like not in a very good place at that point. Do not get sappy, Cathrin. And I ultimately decided that I was going to get those shots, because they said, like, it wasn't going to slow labor at all. They were like, it's really just going to help you relax, and the more you can relax, like, the better you can actually progress. So they gave me 2 shots, 1 in both butt cheeks, and when I tell you that knocked me out, like, on the way home, I was half asleep. I could have been asleep in that car if I wanted to, but it was, like, 1 o'clock in the morning or something, and I was like, my man is driving. Like, I'm very much so someone that, like, you do not sleep in the car if someone else is driving, especially at night. Like, you just don't risk it. And we have a little visitor. He ended up wanting a little bit more food. So that next day, contractions were consistent, but they weren't consistent enough for me to track them. And the day following, so this was Sunday, I knew that my man had to leave. He had a flight out of town on Monday. And wouldn't you know it, Cameron was leaving town on Wednesday. And besides Cameron, my backup plan was gonna be to call my dad, because he's just a short flight. My dad was also leaving town on Wednesday for a 3-week trip, and I was going to be SOL. And I just like knew on Sunday, like I said, I mean, I wasn't tracking my contractions, but like I was just like, this isn't progressing. Like, I could be in this state for a couple of days, and quite literally, I can't be here alone. I can't drive myself to the hospital. If Cameron's not going to be here, like, I do not have a plan. Like, what am I gonna do? I'm gonna call an Uber and have an Uber, like, take me to the hospital? It could have, you know, it could have worked. But my man encouraged me to actually call my mom and see if my mom could come into town. I can't believe I'm getting this emotional about it. It's just like, this is the first time like reliving this whole story. So I ended up calling my mom, told her what was going on, and I asked if she could change her flights because she was originally planning on coming, I think actually this upcoming weekend. So it was supposed to be like 2 weeks after his due date. She was gonna come for a whole week, and I just asked if she could come earlier so that if I hadn't gone into labor, she could take me to the hospital. Like, I could not be here alone. It just like was not going to happen. So shout out to my mom. She changed her flight plans so that my man was going to be able to be there on part of the day on Monday, and then like Cameron I knew was going to be in town Monday, Tuesday, and my mom was going to arrive into town late on Tuesday, and then like going forward she was going to be with me. So I had like my people in place of what I kind of needed so that like I wasn't alone, because like when you can't drive. I really was not expecting to cry at like this part in the story, but around 7:45 that night, contractions started to get more serious. And I distinctly remember I was in the living room leaning over my exercise ball working through a contraction, and after it was done I looked at my man and I was like, these are different. And that whole day on Sunday, I was actually experiencing back labor. So the day before, I wasn't at all. It was like all in my belly. Like I could feel it down low. It felt more so like period cramps. But on Sunday, it was back labor. Like it was a totally different experience. So when the contractions like really, really started to hit, I looked at him and I was like, these are different. And it kind of got to me that like, tonight might actually be the night, I'm not sure. But I was leaning over my exercise ball, and after a few times I realized that was not helping because I was in so much back labor. Like it almost was more uncomfortable in a sense. So I had to like stand up, walk around. I was actually like putting away laundry and I was tidying up because my mom was arriving in 2 days and she was gonna sleep in the nursery, and I was like, okay, I need to clean up the nursery. And I was just like walking around doing things. I would go into the bedroom, I was doing a couple of things, and my man was in the living room with me when I was contracting in the living room, and then I moved to the bedroom and he joined me in the bedroom. And it got to the point where I was like, I just need to be alone. I didn't even vocalize this to him. I haven't even talked to him about this, but I'm very much so someone that like I can be stronger on my own, especially when it comes to like him. I can lean on him, I can be soft around him, you know, and I can like kind of feel weak in a sense and know that he is going to be like a pillar of support for me. And while contracting, I did not need to feel weak. Like I did not need to lean into that vulnerability. I needed to be strong within myself and just like do my own thing. So he followed me into the bedroom, and it was like almost immediately I just like left the bedroom and went back to the living room because I was like, I just need to like be in the zone right now. So I was in the zone in the living room working through contractions. I was obviously tracking them on my contraction timer, and I was leaning over the couch. Like I was standing at the back of the couch with my hands on the back, leaning over, moaning through contractions. And then at one point they started to get like really, really serious, and I just needed to like focus on something outside of my body. So with every contraction, I was actually staring at the doorknobs on my two back doors that I have in the living room, like on both sides of the fireplace. I would focus on one for one contraction, and then I would focus on another for another contraction. And that was like so incredibly helpful. But it got to the point, what time was it? I think it was probably like 10:16 that I went back into the bedroom, and I was like, I don't think I can do this anymore. I was like, this is really, really getting to the point where I almost felt like I was losing control. I was tensing up more than I was relaxing through the contractions, and I knew that wasn't going to help me at all. But I walked back in the bedroom and I told him, like, I don't think I can do this anymore. We should probably go to the hospital. I was just like, my fears they're gonna send me home. I was like, because of what happened the night before, I was like, they are just going to send me home. So he was like, okay, let me go to the bathroom and we'll head there. While I was between contractions, I decided to walk downstairs, and I don't think it was really until I was like at the car that I realized, oh my gosh, like these have gotten so strong. The pain in my back was insane. It was crazy that I was just like leaning on my car, moaning. I had my blanket, my pink Target blanket that I have on my couch in my living room. I had that wrapped around me, and I was just like, oh my gosh, going through it. I swear that man took like 20 minutes to go to the bathroom, even though I know it was probably only like 2, but it felt like freaking forever before he came downstairs, got in the car. I like had to like recline the seat a little bit. I had 2 serious contractions the car ride from my house to the hospital. The hospital is relatively close to my house, so very grateful for that. And in between those 2 contractions, I was zoned out. Like, I'm telling you, I was not even in that car. I was on a totally different planet. We sat there in silence. I didn't realize until like I had my epidural. It wasn't actually until the morning after that like we were like talked about what happened. And my man was like, I like wanted to put on music, but I didn't know if I should put on music, so we just like sat there in silence. Which honestly, like if he would have asked me if I wanted music or not, like I'm sure I was totally like not coherent at that point in time. Hilarious. Before the story continues, I'm realizing that I forgot to share a key part. So since I had that like bloody discharge happening, when the blood stopped, I was still having discharge, but I thought absolutely nothing of it until I got to the hospital and they asked, and I was like, yeah, no, I've been having discharge. And they were like, we need to check to see if your water broke. Turns out my water had actually broke. So your water is a little bit of a cushion of the head with the cervix, you know? So when your water breaks, it's far more on your cervix. And I think that's why I was in a good bit of pain, besides the fact that I was having back labor, which we're going to talk about in one second. But yeah, no, I had no idea that my water broke. So then they asked me, they like kept coming in. They were like, when did you notice this? Like, we need to make sure everything is good, because like infections, I'm pretty sure can happen. I think it's like 24 hours after your water breaks, like that baby should come out type thing. And they just like kept asking, and I was like, I think it was at this point. I don't know, but I was like, this is when at least like labor started to get different. So I was like, maybe it was at this point. Little man is fine. But yeah, my water did break and I had no idea. So we get to the hospital. He actually drops me off at the door because like you had to park in this parking lot, take an elevator up, and then like walk to the emergency room, or you could just be dropped off. So the first night we like did all of that because I was able to walk, I was fine. Sunday night, like I could not. I could not. So he ended up dropping me off right at the emergency room door. I had just gotten past like the front desk, and I was like about to pass through the doorway where I had to walk down a long hallway to get to the elevator to go the whole way to labor and delivery, and I could not make it. I leaned over on the wall and I was just like moaning. I'm telling you, there were 2 people in the waiting room for the emergency room. There was no one at the desk at the time, but they ended up notifying someone. Someone came out and they were like, hey, are you okay? And I was like, I'm just in labor. And they were like, do you need someone to wheel you up there? Because I entered alone. So they were like, are you alone? Like, what's going on? So she was like, do you have someone with you? Like, I'll get you a wheelchair, what? And then my man ended up walking in and I was like, yeah. He went, got a wheelchair, wheeled me upstairs. And thankfully, because we had like walked through the whole process the night before, they saw like how the state I was in, okay? They immediately just like brought us back. They were like, go back, like go. Just, you know where you're going, you've been here, just do it, just go. And I ended up having the exact same nurse that I had the night before, and I was like so excited to see her. I was like, oh my gosh, girl, I'm back. I was like, thank goodness. She ended up doing my cervix check and she could not feel my cervix at all. So she was like, I need to call in the doctor for them to do it. So the doctor came in and I was having contractions. And the contractions were like they were very, very consistent, but they were pretty irregular in the sense of like length and how close together they were. So it felt like they were extremely close together. And even after like one contraction, then there was just like so much movement down low that it felt like I was having another contraction, which I later found out is because this man from the first night to the second night decided to flip and ended up being sunny side up, which is what caused my back labor. And he was then trying to flip back. So after every contraction, he was wiggling, trying to move, and oh my gosh, it was this whole thing. So it ended up being a little while working through contractions before I was able to have the doctor actually check my cervix. And they like got to the point where they were like, "Hun, like you need to tell us when a good break is, because like without this, we cannot give you an epidural. Like we cannot move forward. We cannot admit you unless we know like how far dilated you are." So ended up having a good break. They checked, I was 4 centimeters dilated, and they were like, "Game on, let's go. Like you can get your epidural. We're gonna take your blood work and we're gonna process you to be admitted." So they took my blood work. We ended up going back to the room, and when I tell you the lab, there was something wrong with the lab. And they did not say anything to my nurse. So I was in there contracting, working through. They like put my IV in. They were asking me all the questions. They were having my man fill out all the paperwork because I couldn't fill out all the paperwork. And my nurse was just like waiting. She was like, I'm just waiting on the epidural. Like I'm waiting on your labs to be cleared. Like what the heck is going on here? Well, it turns out apparently one of the machines was down or something, and they actually needed to get another sample of my blood, but they didn't notify my nurse. So it was over 45 minutes that then she called down, got this information, and was like so annoyed for me. And I was like, "It's fine, just like take more blood." Like I was like, "Let's just go, let's get this done." So they ended up taking more blood. I was so far out of it, I did not realize how bad they bruised my arm. I need to have blood taken from my left arm, not my right arm. Right arm, I always get bruised, like my veins just aren't as good, but that's far too much information. So they'd already done my left arm, they needed to do my right arm, this whole thing. So they ended up getting more blood, processed it, I got the epidural, and when I tell you, like, I was nervous to get the epidural. I definitely was. And I don't know what I was nervous about, because even they told me, they were like, the first shot is really the worst. You won't even notice the second. The first was not bad, especially after back labor. Like, are you kidding? Like, it was absolutely nothing. So they gave me the epidural, laid me down. My right side immediately went numb. My left side didn't. I noticed it was like in less pain, but I don't know if it was just because I couldn't feel the pain on my right, that like it felt like I was in half the pain as before type thing. So the nurse ended up asking me like, "Hey, how's the epidural doing?" And I was like, "I still really feel my left side." And she was like, "Okay, we can have them come back in. They might need to move the thing. I don't know. Sorry if this like freaks you out," but they were like, "We might need to move the thing, or we can actually just like up your epidural." So they ended up coming back in. They like moved the thing in my back. They gave me a little bit more, and that knocked me out. Like my left side numb. I was a freaking lump there on that bed. So this was, I don't even know what time, because so if we left the house 10 o'clock, it was probably like midnight, maybe 1 a.m. at this point, and I was able to go to sleep. So they kept checking in on me, asking if I wanted to like move sides and stuff, and really, it was so chill. My nurse was incredibly sweet. Like, I had the best staff, minus that, like, one situation the first night. I had the most incredible staff. It was amazing. So around 4 or 5, the nurse came in, and she was like, "Hey, I just got a message from the doctor, and she like wants me to do another cervix check just to see how far dilated you are, to see if she needs to come in earlier, if she can come in around her normal time." So they ended up doing a check, and I was only 5 or 6 centimeters dilated. So like I really hadn't progressed that much. And she was like, "You're fine. Just go back to bed and just like let your body do its thing." By the time it got to 7 in the morning, I think it was like maybe like actually 6:30, the heart rate monitor had lost his heartbeat. So that's incredibly common. Okay. Baby moves, and especially as they're shifting down lower and lower and lower, the monitor needs to be adjusted as well. So the nurse came in, adjusted the monitor, and it took a while for her to find his heartbeat. And I'm not gonna lie, it did like freak me out a little bit, but I was like, he's fine. Like everything's fine, he's fine, it's fine. But it was a couple of minutes for her to find his heartbeat. And turns out it was just because he was so low. So she was trying to have the monitor up higher where it was, but he had shifted so far low that they needed the monitor low. Well, fast forward another hour, this is when I think it was more so like 7 o'clock, okay? A different nurse came in, they had a change of shift, and she was like, hey, the monitor fell off again, I need to like find his heartbeat. She took even longer to find his heartbeat. And I told her, I was like, hey, the last nurse, like, he had shifted so low, I think you need to try lower, lower, lower. And she just couldn't find it. And then she would find it for a little. And then, like, the monitor wouldn't stay in place, all of this stuff. And she was about to call in help to have someone else, like, place the monitor when the doctor actually came in. And she was like, I want to check you, see how far dilated you are, see how things are going. If you're like still not progressing as fast as we would like, we're gonna put you on Pitocin. So at this point I had just had the epidural. I had no Pitocin induction drug. And yeah, so she checked me and she was like, you're 10 centimeters dilated. And the nurse was like, oh, that's why I couldn't find his heartbeat, because he's so low. So apparently he was at -1 station. I'm not exactly sure what that means. I looked it up, but it's really not that big of a deal. So she was like, okay, we're gonna get ready to push pretty soon. And I asked her, I was like, I do not feel ready to push. Like, should I? Or is that just like part of the epidural that like you just don't really feel it? And she was like, yeah, no, like you're numb, girl. She was like, you're not gonna really feel ready to push, but like your body, he is at a 10. So they said, what we're going to do is we're going to sit you up a little bit and let you labor down, is what I think they called it, and just like let gravity do its thing. So they were like, we're gonna sit you up for 45 minutes and let him try to move just slowly down a little bit more before you start pushing, and just like let gravity do its thing. So at that point, it was 7 something in the morning, I don't even know, because we started pushing 8:15. I looked at my man and I was like, do you want to go home to take care of the dogs, to pack up your stuff, because he had to leave at 1 o'clock. So he ultimately decided like, no, that's probably not the best thing, because like, what if he ends up like coming out sooner? I figured, I was like, I still got plenty of time. I was like, go home, like, you're good. I'm gonna sit here for 45 minutes and I'm gonna push. Like, I was like, we're fine. He ended up staying. At 8:15 we started pushing, and I'm telling you, it was the most chill experience of my life. The nurse sat on the end of my bed and watched the contraction monitor, and she was like, okay, I think one's coming on, do you feel it? And at that point, like, I'm not sure if they stopped the epidural or what happened, but I could start to feel a little bit more pressure down there. It was not uncomfortable. It was not pain by any means. It was just more pressure. So I'm not sure if they stop the epidural or like what they do by the time you're like ready to push. But I could feel my contractions coming on, and sometimes the monitor wouldn't even pick up on them, I think because the placement of the monitor on my belly. But my contractions were pretty irregular at that point. They would come like too frequently back to back, and then I would have like a 5 to 6 minute break and there would be nothing. So I ended up pushing for an hour and a half, which seems like a long time, but in reality, it did not feel that long at all because my contractions were so spaced out. So I was pushing with my nurse for a while until the doctor came in. She sat down on the end of my bed and I was like, hey girl, I like your glasses. Because her glasses were so cute. And it was just like the most chill environment in the world. I'm telling you, like, my man, for the longest time while I was pushing, he was just sitting on the couch. I don't even know if he was on his phone paying attention. Like, I have no idea. Like, because it was so chill. And I was like, he's not here yet. Like, you don't need to be right beside me. Like, you just do your thing. I'm gonna do my thing. Like, we're fine. All's fine. So then the doctor or nurse told him like, hey, do you want to come closer? They brought a chair closer to my head. He came over. He was just sitting down chilling the whole time. Like, I'm telling you, it was the most calm vibes ever, and it was amazing. The doctor was just sitting on the end of my bed. They were just telling me like, yeah, you're doing a great job, and I can tell like the difference between like a good push and a bad push based off their reaction, and like where I actually needed to focus my energy. And it was so good. And the next thing you know, I felt his head come out, and they were like, oh, there's his head and there's his shoulders, and like I could feel all of it, and they just placed him on my chest, and it was, I'm telling you, the most chill labor ever. Or chill delivery ever. Labor wasn't as chill, but delivery, like, I don't know, I wasn't expecting the doctor to just sit on the end of my bed. Like, it was really, really peaceful, and it was absolutely amazing. So he came out, they placed him on my chest, did all the things, whatever. My man cut the cord, and it was maybe an hour after he was born that my man had to leave to come home to take care of the dogs, to shower, pack up his stuff. He came back to the hospital. I'm so sad for him, and that's like why I'm gonna cry. Held his son one time, gave him a kiss, gave me a kiss, and he left. And my heart just breaks for him that was his experience, because like I'm so grateful that he was able to be there, but like he had to report back. There was no other option. Like, he just had to report back, and he had his flight and he had to go. So yeah, I ended up having a really, really amazing staff the whole entire time I was at the hospital, because I was at the hospital by myself. I was solo momming from the beginning. And I had one person come in, I'm not even sure what their job was, and she asked, she was like, "Where's Dad?" And I was like, "Oh, he had to like report back, he's in the military." And she looked at me and was like, "You know, they often get thanked for their service, for their sacrifice." And she was like, the spouses, the partners tend to get overlooked for their sacrifice. She was like, the fact that you are doing this alone, and like you are, for lack of a better word, allowing him to do this for our country type thing. She was like, it is your sacrifice that needs to be thanked as well. And that just like really hit me. It was just like so incredibly sweet. So yeah, Cameron ended up coming that afternoon to check on her little TT, Cam's baby. She took care of my dogs for the 2 days that I was not, well, she took care of them that night and the next day, and then my mom got into town the following day, and my mom brought us home from the hospital on Wednesday. So that ended up working out perfectly, because Cameron left town first thing on Wednesday. Again, my dad left town on Wednesday, and I don't really know, like I didn't realize that I wouldn't be able to drive for a whole week, but I don't know what I was thinking. I was really just like, yeah, sure, I can do everything myself. I was like, yeah, I know he's got to leave. Like, yeah, I can just drive home. It's no big deal. Like, no, they don't allow you to drive home. You're not allowed to drive for a whole freaking week. So incredibly, incredibly grateful that my mom was able to arrive when she was able to arrive. This is her first grandkid that she's seen, like the youngest. So she has 3 grandkids, but this one, like, she saw him at 2 days old, which is like really, really cool. And then she was with us for a whole week. But yeah, there you have it, you guys. Labor and delivery. Oh, let me explain a little bit more about my man situation, what's going on. So he does get paternity leave with the military, which is great. So he gets 3 months off, which is fabulous, but he actually can't take that for another month. So this guy will be 6 weeks old by the time he takes his paternity leave, and he will be coming back here. We will be in Alabama for 3 months, and then I was a little cryptic with this. I told you guys that I was not selling my house, but I did not tell you that I was going to be moving. So yeah. The game plan is to follow him. Obviously, like, he does not have a choice with like where he's stationed and stuff. So we are going to follow him and be together as a family. And then I am keeping this house. I will be back here probably a good bit. I'm not honestly sure how much, but I do love this house. This house is by no means finished. So little man and I will be traveling back, and we'll probably spend like 2 weeks here at a time or whatever, but we will be following his daddy. So that's it. That was an incredibly long story. If you guys are currently pregnant and if you're worried about labor and delivery, honestly, don't be. Like, I don't know, if you want to get the epidural, freaking get the epidural. Like, don't listen to people that are like, oh my gosh, you need to be so whatever, like, or oh my gosh, it's so much pain. It's really, really not. If you want to go into it unmedicated, freaking do it. Like, if you want to do your research and learn laboring positions and breathing techniques and all that stuff, I had a couple of people tell me, like, you're overthinking this, you shouldn't be doing that. And it's funny because I told my therapist that, like, I was getting that response, and she was like, girl, you do whatever you want to do. And that's like my best advice for you, is like, just go into it as prepared as you want to go into it. Do your research if you want to do your research. If you don't want to do your research, don't do your research. Totally fine. But it's going to be all good, you know, like, one way or another, your baby's going to come out of your body and it's going to be all okay. It's going to be totally fine. So yeah. Now I have this sweet little bubble guppy who is honestly so slumped. I've got a mosquito eating my arm right now, and I do not have a hand to knock it off. We are gonna go because it is time for me to feed his sisters. So, see you guys.